This video was supposed to be topical, but at this point, the Super Bowl was almost 2 weeks ago, so much for that. But anyway, advertisements. Why do advertisements actually work anyway? Because there's the old joke, right, that everyone thinks that advertisements don't work on them, but everyone thinks that advertisements work on everyone else. And what I'm going to argue is, ironically, that's pretty close to the truth. Um, I think this is a solved question. The definitive article, in my opinion, about why advertisements work and how advertisements work is a blog post by the blog Melting Asphalt, which used to post a lot of blogs back in the day. And they have, I think, the definitive article on why advertisements work. It's called Ads Don't Work That Way. So, in this post, he presents, I think, a pretty persuasive argument for why advertisements don't work the way everyone else thinks, but they do work in a very specific way. So I'm not going to give justice to the arguments, but I am going to recount what he thinks are the explanations. So, first of all, there's the conventional explanation. So, first of all, there's overt persuasion, which is this is like rational ads, advertisements that list the quality of the products. You should buy this car because it has this and this gas mileage, it has this and this satisfactory scores, or this price. So, that's a very small fraction of the ads. So, the vast majority of people understand that ads don't usually use overt persuasion. Like, these are rational ads. So what about all the rest of the ads? Melting Asphalt presents there are two models. There's the Inception model. The Inception model says that advertisement works kind of like Pavlov's dogs. You present a treat to them every time you ring the bell, so they associate the bell with the treat. And so it's the same way where uh, you show someone a juicy hamburger on the TV, and then that juicy hamburger, if you say good words next to it enough times, then those good associations will worm their way into the subconscious brain of the viewer to the point where when you're at the grocery store going down the aisle and you look at the food product that they're trying to sell, uh, it's going to resurface like as from your subconscious. It will tell you you need to get this product because you've seen it in the ad. So it's wormed its way into your subconscious mind. So like Pavlov's dog, you want the product. He calls that the Inception model. And then he presents a secondary model, which is the cultural imprinting model. So, first of all, why can't we just use the Inception model? Well, Melting Asphalt says that that doesn't actually work because there's no actual reward. And there's a whole bunch of other problems with it, he explains. But at least in Pavlov's dogs, there actually was a treat at the end. But in advertisements, there's no treat, right? It's just stuff on the screen. So maybe abstractly, your brain would form a positive association if you connect it with enough positive stuff. But that's not really strong enough to make you want to go out and desire the product for most people. So, what's the competing explanation? So, the explanation he gives instead is what he calls cultural imprinting, which is like if you show an advertisement of people drinking Corona on the beach, or you show an advertisement of Nike and someone being athletic wearing Nike shoes, then people will associate the Corona with beach and fun times, and people will associate the Nike with general athleticism. But that's not because of any sort of subconscious subliminal messaging. There was like a scare in the 90s and 2000s about subliminal messaging. Well, it's not that. It's instead a social transition where it's not so much that that messaging makes you desire the product, but rather it's more like it convinces you by watching the ad that everyone else desires the product. So it's like when you see that advertisement of people drinking Corona on the beach, you think, oh, that's stupid, I'm not falling for this. But you know that there are many other people seeing the ad. If you show people enough times advertisements like this, then in the general cultural zeitgeist, people will start to associate the Corona with fun times on the beach, and people will start to associate Nike with athleticism because people know that everyone else is seeing the same funnel of advertisements. And people understand this is we're bombarding us with this culture 24/7. It's all over the place. And so everyone generally in the culture, maybe they're not as smart as you, they all see these advertisements and you think other people are persuaded by them. So then when you go to the beach and you start drinking Corona, it's all about social signaling. It's not so much you want to feel like you're strong on the beach. It's more like you think, oh, if I reach for the Corona, then other people, since they saw all those ads, they will, because they have that association, they're going to associate me with fun times on the beach. And I'm sort of sending that message based on the fact that Corona is that kind of beer or whatever. I'm sort of signaling, hey, this is what I want to do now. I want to have fun times on the beach. This is the vibe I'm going for. And you're communicating that with other people. And it's a very meta level thing, like a sort of Steven Pinker idea of everyone knows when everyone knows. If it was just you that thought that the Corona was nice or that the Nike with that was athletic, then it wouldn't have the effect. It would only have the subliminal messaging effect, the Inception model. But if you think that other people know that, then it has a stronger effect because it's the signaling effect. But it's even stronger if you think that other people think that you know that it has that effect, because if other people know that you know it has that effect, then other people in their reactions to you can react the appropriate way, which creates the sort of reaction that you're going for. But in order for people to react that way, they have to know that you think that. So it's all recursive all the way down. It's sort of like this idea of common knowledge, where there's a difference between knowing something versus knowing that the other person knows that you know that they know that you know. If you reach an arbitrary level of nesting and recursion, it just becomes the sort of thing of common knowledge where a certain product is associated with a certain vibe. And it's really enough to sort of create a stereotype of the product, because at what point does it bleed into actually people believing that it has those properties? Because sort of all signaling works this way, right? When people buy Gucci bags, do they really prefer the craftsmanship of the Gucci bag or something? Or do they just know that in the culture, other people value Gucci bags that amount? It's sort of like why money is valuable. It's all like social second order effects. It's not money is intrinsically valuable. It's second order valuable. Just we only value money because other people value money. So what every advertisement company wants to do is have that social recognition bleed from people in their advertisements saying the thing to other people knowing everyone's seen these ads, so we all know this is the thing. So it's to create stereotypes for these different brands of what kind of products they are. Under this model, then it's very different predictions about what types of ads will be successful. Under the Inception model, you actually want your ads to be as inconspicuous as possible. Ideally, the viewer should not even know that they're viewing an ad, because an ad that worms itself into the mind and the subconscious mind of the viewer the best is the one that is just invisible. But under the cultural imprinting model, it's actually the opposite, where if you see an ad, that's one thing. It's exponentially greater if you see someone else seeing an ad, because then you think, oh, everyone is seeing this ad. So presenting your ad like on a billboard or a very publicly visible space like the Super Bowl, that is creating the second order effect where you're thinking, okay, this is not something that is just for me, not something other people ignore. This is a broader effect on the society. So those ads are actually greater if they're more visible, if they're more labeled, this is an ad, this is an ad. Or maybe not, this is an ad, but this is something everyone sees. But you might say, okay, well, not all ads are about social signaling. Not all ads really work that way. Like, what about your bank? You know, why does your bank advertise? Is it because you want to socially signal that you shop at that bank? Really? Isn't that kind of a stretch? Or why does Disney advertise for being family friendly? But really, it's all part of the same process where these institutions want to create certain impressions in the public. I think Melting Asphalt calls this the promise theory. Your bank, they're advertising so much because they're trying to commit to this. They're trying to create this social proof that says, hey, this bank, they can afford to spend a lot of money on advertising because it's a well-established institution. They've been advertising for a long time. A lot of people have seen their ads because they just have a lot of money and they're a well-respected institution that can afford these ads. And the same thing with Disney being family friendly. They're intentionally typecasting themselves as being that way because then if they weren't family friendly, then people would get mad at them or something, or people would say, hey, why do you advertise this way when in reality you're something else? So it's beneficial to sort of create a mold for themselves where now when you go and you see Disney, then you know it's going to be family friendly. Maybe fast food chains, they sort of create a similar effect where when you go to McDonald's, it's a reliable experience. Well, ads, since you don't maybe go to the movies as often as you get cheeseburgers, they need to do that through the television by broadcasting themselves. Hey guys, just so you remember, we're still family friendly. So it's committing to that so that in a way, if they went against that, there would be a social violation to them. So it's a credible signal. So you might say, okay, well, I can believe that this works well for highly signal based goods like Gucci or Nike or beer brands or something. But does this really work on everything? Because I buy a lot of products which are just good for around the house or that not a lot of people are going to see me using. So why do those products advertise so much? And what I'm going to say now is just my own personal speculation, and it'll be a bit weird, so I hope I explain it correct. But I think to some extent, there's an aspect of you which is judging yourself from a third party perspective. I believe that it's possible in a way for social pressures and social signaling to work even if no one is watching you. Because we might not want to socially signal to other people, but we do subtly want a social signal to ourselves. It's sort of like, if you go to my room and my room is all messy and has beer cans all over the floor that haven't been picked up and thrown away, I'm going to feel a bit of, I don't know, like, oh, damn, I better clean up, right? I'm going to feel a bit of disgust about that because it's sort of like you're imagining your deity or your parents or like your ancestors or something. You're imagining something watching you. Like ancient people, they would talk about this. Like my ancestors are watching me, and it was a common idea. It was like your conscience or something other than yourself is watching you. And maybe in the end of the day, it is just yourself watching you, but your mind is constructing a mind in its mind that's recursive in the same way that it's recursive socially. And this is kind of a fringe theory, but I don't know. Maybe it's different for different people. I know for me, I sort of judge myself sometimes from a third party perspective. Like if I'm driving and I like make a turn, I kind of talk to myself like, "Oh, shouldn't have made that turn" or something. Or um honestly, sometimes even if I'm playing a video game single player by myself, I sort of imagine I'm the best video game player in the world and I need to win the championship, like inventing a narrative for why it's important that I need to play the game and get a good score, just so to motivate me. And then that is sort of imagining people watching me. Maybe this is just me, but occasionally when I'm playing music out loud, like in my car, I sort of imagine there's a passenger, even if there's not a passenger, like judging my taste in music and like, oh, that's a good song. So is that just me? But I imagine myself being viewed. So I think in the same way that advertisements can create a socially signaling effect, everyone knows that everyone knows this. If they can convince you fully that everyone knows that, even if it's just you, then by your judging of yourself, you still want to get the product. So that may be convoluted, but I think that's relevant here. I think lastly, you might ask yourself, okay, but I always see these advertisements from Nationwide and Geico and whatever. Like, why does Geico need to advertise? They're not advertising based on any rational reason to buy it. Maybe sometimes, like, we're cheaper, but it's just to put their name brand in the air. What is that? Is that really still the cultural imprinting model? Are other people going to judge you based on what insurance you buy? Or does that seem like perhaps it's more like the Inception model? And based on how I said the Inception model was incorrect previously, I think my justification for that is I guess really at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. When I'm choosing what insurance to buy, what insurance am I going to buy? Let's say it's my very first time buying insurance. Um, am I going to buy a name brand like Nationwide or Geico? I mean, at the very least, I'm going to buy a brand that's recommended to me by someone I trust. But failing that, let's say I have no recommendations. If I just Google what insurance to buy, I have two choices. One is Nationwide Insurance, the other is a random PDFQWZST insurance that I've never heard of. Well, I'm probably not going to buy the insurance I can't pronounce because I've never heard of it. So how do I know it's any good? But it's really funny because I never knew that Nationwide was any good. But it's like the promise theory I talked about earlier, where part of you is like, okay, they've spent a lot on advertising. I have to believe that Nationwide is not a scam. Or maybe it's bad. I don't know. But if it were full on a scam, like they were just stealing people's money or breaking laws left and right, or it didn't even exist, like I think I would have heard about it. It would be in the news or something. Like the fact that people even let them advertise is sort of a signal in itself. Whereas if it was just a straight up scam, if it was a Russian hacker posting a listing on a website paying $20 to get their listing on SEO so that I buy their crappy insurance and they're gonna scam me and I'm never gonna see that money. If it's just like some random guy operating this insurance company out of his basement and it had no justification, no one would ever get that money. First of all, that would be really bad. Second of all, it would be hard to explain. I would have to say, if I need that money and I have to start begging for money from people I know, it will sound really embarrassing. Why don't you have insurance? Well, I did, but I was so dumb. I bought this insurance from like a guy in Russia. So just to, if anything, even if you don't think you need insurance, just to avoid the embarrassment of like, what the heck are you doing? You're gonna avoid options you've never heard of just because there's the concern that it might be a straight up scam. And I feel myself doing this as well, not necessarily for insurance, but for like different things where it's like, I don't really care about this, but um I know that I need such and such. And like, who do I buy from? I buy from some listing I've never heard of, or I buy the brand name. Honestly, part of me is drawn to buying the brand name. And is that irrationality? I think it's not fully irrational. I think it's like, well, this brand name, they've competed in the marketplace, they've been successful, they must have something going for them. By advertising, you're putting your brand name out more, which is creating that impression that you are more successful in that way, positively reinforcing the impression that you want. So that, I think, part of is why advertising works.